Good evening and welcome to VI Voices. I'm Emile Henderson III. Along with me, we have Natalie Nelson, Tang and Clint Ferris.
Sure.
We are here for yet another evening of where we will have with us the opportunity of Mr. Andrew Rutnik, who is running for the seat of Senator-at-Large this year. And of course, he will be in a primary, the Democratic primary this year. And we've been having individuals come onto the show so that you, the audience, have an opportunity to know who they are and get a feel for who they are. And so tonight is no different. What I will say, however, is we also extended invitations to Mr. Ronnie James and to Senator Barshinger. We did receive notice from Mr. Jones, Ronnie Jones. Mr. Jones that he got our invitation late, and so he will not be able to make it. And Senator Barshinger has not responded to our invitation. So we will have to figure out, or you will have to figure out how best to deal with that at the polls come September 8th as to whom you will decide to vote for in the Democratic primary. But we will start tonight with hot topics, as we start every show with hot topics. And the first thing we want to start with is the Democratic congressional debate that is going on right now at the UVI Great Hall between Stacey Plaskett and our Congresswoman Donna Christensen. I will tell you, I was down there for about an hour before coming up here for the taping, and it is interesting and it is heated down there.
Wow.
And I think hopefully if you have a chance, you have to go to WTJX.org where they will have it archived, I presume, so you can watch it. And I understand it will also be on the government access channel for you to watch. You have to watch that debate.
But you know, you see, Emile, you have two learned women who are actually vying for this seat. And I think this is one of the best races I've seen in a long time for delegate. I think ever since Delegate Christensen got elected, she hasn't had much competition. I think this is a year that she's receiving competition, and I think also the Democratic Party needs to take heed. If they're thinking about succession planning, look towards the aspirant. Whether she wins the primary or not, this is a good time to think about succession planning and rebuilding the party.
Absolutely. And what I found interesting is that she's pretty much new. I want to say new to the party because, you know, there have been these inferences that she just came to the party. Well, she cleared up tonight.
Right.
She indicated tonight that she was originally a Democrat and left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party because she realized that at that time the Democratic Party was a party of the old boys network, and you couldn't get in, and you couldn't do this, and you couldn't do that, and she didn't want to be a part of it. 2 years ago, she came back to the Democratic Party under the belief that the party was changing. There was being more inclusive of new ideas and new people to come in. Even though she says she still see a little bit of the old vanguard coming through, she made it very clear she's a Democrat now, and she's here to stay, and nobody's going to send her anywhere, and it was really interesting.
And judging from your comments, it seems that she's going to be a change agent in the party and probably in Washington if the people actually put her there.
Well, I agree with that, and she's been on our show previously, along with the current Congresswoman Christensen, and they were both very, very impressive. And I think that Stacey Plaskett had a lot to offer in terms of if you're looking for change, you want to change anyone. You know, she had a lot to offer that would be interesting for the public to just really get into what she's about, what her platform is about, what she proposed, and the fact that she has knowledge up on the hill. You know, she has knowledge and background there. And so I think she's definitely a person to watch. And I think she thinks that this is her time. Regardless of what anybody else thinks, we have to give her that respect that she thinks that this is her time. So,
well, you're not. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say is that I think for Donna Christensen, who has been there for quite a while, she realizes that she has to step up to the plate and really convince the people as to why we should.
That's what I saw tonight.
Yes.
Because tonight, and I agree with you, Clint, for many years, there has not really been serious competition for the delegates. So she kind of coasted her way through.
Pretty much.
And pretty much, you know, this is what I've done, and this is, I remember last election, she didn't have an opponent in the election. And so, I shouldn't say the election, in the primary, sorry, in the primary. But tonight, you could see that she had to step her game up because Attorney Plaskett has raised the bar on this issue, on what it is to be a delegate, what has come through Congress that benefits the territory of the Virgin Islands, and it appears, you know, put a plug for lawyers. You know how we are, most of us, always prepared. And it's evident that she researched every single thing because her responses were based on, I've researched this and this is what happened.
And see what you're talking about right there is, and that is good, because you know the preparation is going to take her on into that. Those virtues are going to carry on on the hill if she does happen to capture the primary and win in the general. But if she doesn't win, and I think our delegate is going to be more prepared, as well as she's going to make some promises that the people are going to be able to look forward towards. And then this is a good time to transition, if you're thinking about it. A great time to transition from one leadership style to the next, in terms of moving from Christensen to Stacey Plaskett, or Christensen eventually passing the baton on to Stacey Plaskett.
One thing I believe that Attorney Plaskett has an uphill battle with is the fact that our Congresswoman is an established candidate. And people, for whatever intents and purposes, vote on establishment. That's the name I know her, and that's what I'm doing. We don't care. Some people just don't care no matter how new the ideas are or how great the other ideas may sound. She has an uphill battle, which means she has to really go out there and get herself out there to the people who are going to the polls come September 8th.
And in fact, I don't really feel it's because she's solely an established candidate. It's just the type of politics we have in the Virgin Islands. Now, if this was another locale on the mainland, you'd have probably see a total change. You'd have probably see a youth movement taking place, or universities, students mobilizing behind this younger candidate that has fresh ideas and advancing some of the change.
I would say that for now, maybe, in 2008, when President Obama mobilized all those young people. I'm not sure that would work today. And even prior to 2008, because that explains why Strom Thurmond could have been in the Senate forever with all of his divisive tactics. Nobody ever removed him from office while he was running. It was almost like Strom Thurmond, okay, I know that name, click. And it doesn't matter what he did in Congress.
But isn't that also similar for her predecessor, Ron DeLuca? He was there for ages and ages, and we kept putting him back for however long until he...
Well, let the record reflect, I couldn't vote then. So we didn't keep doing that.
But you see what I'm talking about?
we in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, okay. That's a better way to say it.
We didn't vote then, but think about, you talk about Strom Thurmond. Think about the young people at that time. They themselves, no matter how much activism they were engaged in, they weren't actually involved in the right activism. They weren't voting. They were out there, make love, not war, doing all those things, and then eventually they were eliminating themselves from the voting process by either running away and going to Canada, or committing felonies, or doing all kinds of things to eliminate themselves from the process. So we can't look at that, but look at Bill Clinton. Look at the Republican Party. There's a youth movement even in that party. Look at the faces in the Republican Party today.
But we're going to come back to talk more about this debate, because it's still going on. We'll be following that. We'll do some more of that in Hot Topics later in the end of the show. But you talked about the youth movement with the Republican Party, and I wanted to touch on that quickly, because it's amazing that they do have a youth movement, but here's the problem with the Republican Party. Their youth movement isn't buying in to the traditional Republican tenets of no abortions, no birth control pills being paid for by the government, the stable things that the Tea Parties and the base gets. Their youth movement isn't really moving in that direction. They're almost moving in that moderate standing. And so it kind of brings the Republican Party somewhat at a crossroads, I believe, when it comes to this voting bloc, which is why we see Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, those people trying to rally up and curry favor to those Tea Party type individuals. So do you think, I don't think the movement for the Republican youth is the same movement for the Democrat youth.
You think so? I mean, I don't think they may have.
In other words, the Democratic youth movement, I believe, was more in line, not completely on the far left, but more in line with the party.
You're right.
And the Republican youth movement is not that in line with them.
And you're right.
I think it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, it's a younger population, first of all, and their ideas and their trends are not necessarily going to be entrenched with what has been the traditional, standing that the Republicans stood for. So that is, I think, a crossroads to the extent now that adjustments have to be made now in the Republican Party to accommodate and embrace that group and capitalize on what they can get out of them.
But you may find it strange that we may now have three major parties developing, because you may have the youth within the Republican Party, co-opt the Republican Party, and the Tea Party become the party of...
Well, it used to be the Republican Party.
Yes, and that may be, I mean, that way maybe see the
But the
transition.
question becomes whether or not that Tea Party that will become the new Republican Party would have enough people
That's right.
to sustain a Republican
Exactly.
Party in the way that they want to do it. Because, you know, with as time goes along, our social issues change.
Right.
Correct, but and you see, this Republican Party, this present Republican Party, really delayed it. And see, history, development, you can chattel it you can chattel it for so long. But this movement was supposed to take place in 2000.
Yes.
When Colin Powell should have ran.
I absolutely agree.
But it didn't happen. So they chatteled that development.
And why do you think that didn't happen?
Because it would have bust the party down the middle.
Why?
Because the
Let's
party,
call it for what it is.
Because the party
Why?
would have to deal with this
Black Colin Powell.
yeah, and its bigotry and all of the prejudices within that party.
Absolutely.
But you see what happens now? It's taking a different form. So instead of having to deal with the Colin Powell issue, then they're now having to deal with other social issues that are gonna do the same, most likely do the same thing that Colin Powell probably would have.
What did they do in 2008 when President Obama won? What was the name of the guy that became the head of the Michael somebody? The head of the RNC.
Steele.
Michael Steele, the black African American guy.
Out of Maryland.
Allegedly, for us to feel comfortable, the Republican Party is going to be somewhat inclusive of us because we now have an African American RNC chair, or had at the time. He didn't last long.
He didn't last
Because
that I recall.
look at it bucked. Because eventually they thought he was being too moderate. So eventually they kicked him out.
You know, I'm all for, and I think everybody, and the country works best when we all have our own opinions and beliefs, because we're supposed to have them. I just think that the Tea Party and some of these really down-home based Republicans are not living on planet Earth. I mean, I don't mean to say it in that way, because, you know, they have their rights to their beliefs. But I just think that they're so far right on their beliefs that it stymies the progress of a nation.
So are you actually saying they're living in, I think it's what, 1898 or 1898?
No, let's not exaggerate here.
No, because
gentlemen, let's not exaggerate here.
Remember the Plessy ruling?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about that. They're living under that particular state.
I am fearful of Plessy returning.
And that's where
they're going. That's why, at least that's where I see that they're going.
But I'm seeing Plessy not just based on color. I'm seeing Plessy based on class and economic standing. And that's where I'm having a problem.
I mean, when you don't want people to have health care, I have a problem with that. I don't see why anyone will wake up in the morning and not want the citizens of their country to have health care. When you get up and you don't want immigrants, and don't get me wrong, I don't want illegal immigrants just rolling into our country and being here. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, for those who have been here and they've worked, when you don't want immigrants coming to this country, when the majority of America, when they started here, were all immigrants.
Was built on the immigrants.
And the immigrants built this country. I have a problem when you try to act as if there's such second-class people, like you don't need them. I have a problem when you decide that who can marry whom. When if we follow your rule, or follow the rules that the Tea Party wants to follow, they have 50-60% a divorce rate amongst them. I could care less who gets married to whom. If you don't believe in gay marriage, then don't marry a gay person. I mean, that's just my thought process. The problem is that a whole bunch of them are already married to gay people. They just may not know that they are. And so if you have all of these dynamics playing with them, and you sit there, you think about the situation, and it's like, okay, how does that move our country forward? How do you intend to fight for humanity, decent human basic rights in other countries, but you don't want to give it to the people who are living in your own country?
Yeah, and you know what? I listened to you, and all of it, in a nutshell, you're saying is hypocritical.
It's absolutely hypocritical. That's what I think.
And yeah, point well taken. But I think that no wonder that they opened their convention so quietly.
Yeah, but I don't think it helps them.
No.
In a whisper.
Yeah, it did. But you know what the troubling part about it is the platform that they were hammering out prior to the convention opening. And to me, that also shows the line in which this party is going. They're not even sticking true to their party. They're actually giving in to the Tea Party.
Because they know that's the only way they'll be able to attempt to have the kind of votes that they may need in certain swing states. That they have to do that. I mean, I'm sure they were kind of happy Isaac was coming through so that Donald Trump wouldn't have to speak on Monday. Because he believes that, he really believes on this birther issue.
Correct.
And so I'm sure he's cut out, so he's not going to be speaking. I think Ann Romney is going to be speaking tonight to humanize her husband.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm not sure how
But
that's going to happen.
But then they have the guy Christie out of New Jersey. He too, even though he may be captivating, I do think he's a bit...
He's loud.
Yeah, and he may not... I don't know the funny thing. He's not their type of people. So sooner or later, he's going to become marginalized. And for this election, he's needed.
But do you remember in 2008, when President Obama won? Remember the crown prince of the party was Bobby Jindal. Remember him? The Indian, of Indian descent, who is the governor of Louisiana.
Correct.
You couldn't even get him now to get 5% rating to be the vice presidential choice.
Correct. But and see what I'm talking about.
That's the difference in 4 years.
And that's the troubling part, because think about all events that took place leading up to this convention. You had a shooting, and then in Colorado, and then you had another shooting in Michigan. Michigan or other place with the Sikh temple.
So Utah.
In Utah.
I think it was Utah.
Okay, but you see what's taking place is, and some of those incidents the Republican Party don't want.
And you had another in Chicago.
Yeah.
Correct. So all of those things are taking place surrounding this convention.
But why do you think they're not going to get involved in that? Because the gun rights people won't allow them to. So it's okay to go on killing people how they want, and they won't allow that because we have this belief of the right to bear arms as the basis for people being able to have their guns. Now, I've always stood the position that when I read the Second Amendment on the right to bear arms, the precursor to that is in order to form a well-organized militia. Not for you to have a whole bunch of guns in your house. I mean,
well, you tell that to the NRA right now.
I
could think of something right now,
but I think that they read it in a vacuum. They only read the section that says the right to bear arms. I'm not saying that you don't have a right to properly go through and have a weapon, but they think that everybody has a right to have a weapon, and that's why you should be able to go in freely at 12 or however age you are and get a gun with nobody even knowing why you need to have a weapon. And I don't think in my view, I don't think that's what it was for. I think it was designed that everyone has the right to bear arms, to have a well-organized militia, so that when we need you to go into war, you have your weapons to start already, because we're not going to give you any. That's what I envisioned. I thought that the process was.
But Emile, if you think about it, think about back in the 60s when people that look like you and I started to follow that same part of the Constitution.
Right.
Didn't they then start to abridge that right?
Right. Yeah, implementing laws, say you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Come on.
Yeah.
So
because we could afford the guns then.
And now that's the problem. And now that we can also afford them a little bit more, we're killing each other. They said, what are they doing? They said we need these guns to protect ourselves from those people.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we know that the gun in and of itself is not dangerous.
That's what the NRA is pushing.
The gun in and of itself.
What about access to the gun? The dangerous part could be the access to the gun.
The access to the gun and the parties that have access to the gun.
Well, apparently so does GRS has access to the guns, because apparently this week the AK-47 was mailed to the GRS building. But we're out of time for this part, and we're going to come back and talk about that in our later part of Hot Topics. But I want to know, since we don't make or manufacture weapons here, how do you get an AK-47 mailed to the GRS building? That's what I want to know. But we'll talk about that when we come back later in the evening on Hot Topics. When we return, we will have with us Mr. Andrew Rutnik, and we'll be back in a moment. And we are back here on VI Voices, and we have with us Mr. Andrew Rutnik, who is running for Senator-at-Large in the Democratic primary. Good evening, Mr. Rutnik, and how are you?
Good
Welcome
evening.
to VI Voices.
Good evening, how are you?
Actually, it's a pleasure to have you here, and you are no stranger to the public service arena, as you used to be at one point the Commissioner of the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs.
That is correct. 8 years under the Turnbull administration.
Okay. Tell the audience a little bit, for those who may not be aware of who you are, let us know who you are.
Well, I come from the island of St. John, as all Senator-at-Large candidates must be from. I have lived there for over 40 years. I have been involved in government and politics for most of those years. I've been a Democrat for over 40 years, and that's why I'm running in this Democratic primary. The involvement in the community over the years has been as a community activist. Aside from being part of the government, I have founded the Gift Hill School, which is a very successful school in St. John, private school. I have founded the Ruby Rutnik Memorial Softball Tournament, which has brought young women from St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, and Tortola to St. John annually for the last 16 years. Raised funds. We've given out over $250,000 in scholarships to young women, Virgin Islands, to go to college. I've been involved in flag football in St. John, a lot of youth programs, and that is my concern. A lot of my issues are related to preventing crime by helping our youth get involved in activities.
Now, as you know, as the senator from, well, I should say senator from St. John, but as the Senator-at-Large, who happens to reside in St. John, there's this thought process that the Senator-at-Large is the senator from St. John, as opposed to the senator for St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. How are you going to balance that?
Well, you know, there's a rich tradition in that. You know, we've had great Senator-at-Larges, although the incumbent right now has not lived up to that standard. That's why I'm running. But that position has been leveraged to help St. John and St. Croix and St. Thomas. It is one vote, but it's an important vote, since there's 7 in St. Thomas, 7 in St. Croix. So that it's an important position, and so that candidate must have familiarity with St. Croix and St. Thomas and St. John. It's unique. It's almost like a gubernatorial person, in that you have to have 3 island experience and be able to work with those senators in order to get things done.
Okay.
What do you think, though, that if you were to be elected as Senator-at-Large, that you can offer to the people of the Virgin Islands in terms of where we stand today, particularly economically, you know, the crisis that we're in? What, if anything, that you think you have in terms of assets specifically that you can move forward in terms of your platform, your agenda for the people of the Virgin Islands?
Well, you know, there's an awful lot of issues right now that, you know, are specific to islands. I would think that right now all focus should be on St. Croix. I have gone from one end to the other. I have been here over the years many times as commissioner. I knew St. Croix and its problems then. They're worse. St. Croix needs the most attention right now. So I believe that through economic development on St. Croix, we have entertained an awful lot of proposals for large hotel complexes. None of them have come to fruition. I believe that if we work with a grassroots tourism organization, developing our towns, restoring our historic facilities, creating bed and breakfast, we could create 200 rooms in Christiansted and Frederiksted that would enrich the towns, save the buildings, provide, you know, customers for restaurants and retail shops. I have been coming to St. Croix for 40 years. I can remember Christiansted being a live and vibrant place, Frederiksted being the same. We need to get that back into place because St. Croix needs to build from the bottom up. No. I do not think that we can attract a flag hotel until we've got something to give them. And I think that that's where the emphasis should be.
Okay. Mr. Rutnik, pleasure.
Sure.
How do you go about, you said one, that vote of the Senator-at-Large is very important. And you mentioned about leveraging that vote. How do you go about getting your colleagues and the stakeholders to buy into anything that you're going to be selling? Because your vote is one and we have 14 other senators with different agendas.
You know, that is, you know, a difficult situation now as we view the Senate. The Senate, you know, obviously right now is not functioning as it should. I think that with a new set of senators and a new approach, that maybe we could get the discourse level raised up so that we could begin to deal with the issues rather than the personalities. Now, how would the Senator-at-Large accomplish that? Well, the Senator-at-Large is able to bring to the table neutrality. He is not elected by the people of St. Croix nor the people of St. Thomas to specifically deal with their issues. He's elected to deal with all their issues. So it gives them an opportunity to be a leader. Someone that can go there and say, listen, St. Croix, you know, you need to have your roads repaired. This road from Frederickstead is in terrible shape. St. Thomas, you know, you have issues related to your overcrowded downtown area. You need to do something about the taxi congestion, the road congestion. Those are issues that aren't St. Croix issues. So the Senator-at-Large should be able to say, look, St. Croix, you need roads. Okay, St. Thomas, you give St. Croix your vote, your support for those roads over in St. Croix so that they could come up to standards, and we'll get the exclusion centers to vote for something you need. It
I'm glad
needs
you
to be
said that, though,
cooperative.
because then how are you going to get the St. Thomas senators who feel that they don't really have a fight in it when it comes to St. Croix issue or vice versa to get on board with whatever you may be proposing to get that majority vote that you're going to need to push your, you know, legislation through?
You have to be a consensus builder. You have to be able to have those skills. And I'm not going to bash the incumbent. He has none of those skills. I do. I would work very hard to let the senators in St. Croix know that in order to get something passed, they need to work with the St. Thomas senators. There cannot be this rancor. There cannot be this jealousy over what St. Thomas or St. Croix got. It's obvious. When Hovenza was here, the amount of money they pumped into this economy, this Virgin Islands economy through their taxes and employment was enormous. I didn't think they got their dollars worth back in services over here in St. Croix. We have to let people know that. We have to let the senators know that these issues can be resolved, but it has to be a trade-off. They have to work together, and that's what's going to have to happen.
The discourse that you all are just having is what buttresses or supports my position that I think all of you need to be voted on at large, because this whole thing about let me get the St. Thomas senators to agree to do a thing for St. Croix, it's the legislature of the Virgin Islands, and when you go in there, you are called a senator, a Virgin Island senator. It's not like in Congress where you're the senator from Utah or you're the senator from New York. When you go there, you're the senator from the United States Virgin Islands. And so it always baffles me that, you know, we sit there, we have to convince somebody from another island, a senator from another island, to do something that logically should make sense to build the structure of the entire Virgin Islands. And my position is, if St. Thomas is the island that needs help, then we should all be willing to do what we have to do to help that island. If St. Croix's island or St. John's island needs help, then nobody should have to be convinced to do something to help that specific island. But I want to ask you this question, because I'm sure there are people who are going to be thinking about it. The cynicism of when you indicated that right now St. Croix needs help, because I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of people that feel every time somebody new runs for office, that's when they recognize St. Croix needs help. We have to focus on St. Croix. Then they go into office and it's like, St. Croix who? And so how are you going to assuage the concerns of those people who may look at that as okay, we're trying to be used again? Because your predecessor, I should say predecessor, the one who's there now, he ran on this thing, oh, St. Croix, St. Croix, St. Croix. When Carmen Wasselhoff ran, she ran on this St. Croix, St. Croix, St. Croix, and you see what happened to her.
Yeah.
She went home because when she got there was no St. Croix, St. Croix, St. Croix. So how are you going to assuage the concerns of those people who may feel that way?
You know, it is a difficult question, because this is politics. When you're trying to get elected, you want to say that it's something good to everybody. But I'm not that kind of person. You know, when I believe in St. Croix. My wife is an artist. She's been involved in the Caribbean Museum Center, and I've been coming over here for many years. I've been coming here from the early 70s. I know St. Croix. I believe in St. Croix. And I know that as senator, I'm sensitive to the issues of St. Croix. I also have learned over the years that, you know, in St. Croix, they don't like you to come in and tell them what to do. You have to learn and listen. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn and listen. And then I will use all my skills and all my powers. And when I was commissioner of DLCA, I had no difference between St. Thomas and St. Croix. I did the same thing. I did it in St. Croix as I did in St. Thomas. I believe St. Croix right now needs all the help it can get. I have seen the economy go down to, I mean, these are not the best of times, but these can be the worst of times for St. Croix.
But what do you think we're doing wrong in St. Croix? You mentioned earlier about different projects being killed every time it comes to, you know, to fruition or supposed to, you know, what do you think we're doing wrong, or what you can do to change that mindset, which is incredibly different from the mindset in St. Thomas? If they could add on some more land to St. Thomas and blow up another mountain, they'll do it, you know, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but what are we in St. Croix not doing or should be doing that you think you could, you know, change things around to make these things happen?
You know, and earlier I touched upon the fact that St. Croix has to be made attractive. St. Croix obviously has a lot more culture and history to display and provide tourists in St. Thomas or St. John. That needs to be done. That needs to be sold. That needs to be reinforced. Our towns have to come back to life. If you brought down a developer and he went through Frederickstead and he said, okay, I'm going to bring 500 people here, what are they going to do? So I believe very strongly that the investment has to be made in St. Croix. And St. Croix does not have enough commerce going on to have that private investment. It needs help. It needs to have a program from the government that invests in St. Croix, and that will pay off. But then they will come here and they will invest in the
Do you believe, however, that we can get these hotel rooms without proper airlifts?
It's the chicken and the egg.
Because one of them have to give way. The airlifts don't want to do it because there are no hotel rooms. The hotel rooms are not going to build any hotel rooms because there aren't any airlifts. How do we get one of them
To marry each other.
right to break and say, okay, well, we'll go first?
That's why I had said it has to grassroots up. You have to make it attractive first. You start with bed and breakfast. You start with small boutique hotels. You need to build them up. When you've got people in your towns, you've got retail shops available, people to shop in, you've got great restaurants, filling these towns up, and the outskirts, not just in Christiansted and Frederickstead, then they'll say, oh, wow, we got, a few extra flights, we have 200 new rooms in these bed and breakfasts and boutique hotels, we're going to bring in a bigger hotel, and you're going to get a 500-room hotel, because there is investment opportunities here. Right now, St. Croix does not have a lot to sell. It's vacant.
Well, you see how many businesses have closed? Have you seen?
Yeah, it's vacant.
You walk around downtown, both Christiansted and Frederickstead.
Boarded
What
up.
it looks like, so, it tells us that our infrastructure, bottom line, it has a lot, to be wanted. And where are we going? And how much further down are we going to go? And are we really going to get bailed out?
Right.
Now, if we talk about it, when we keep talking about the St. Croix economy,
Right.
I don't believe St. Croix has a treasury, and St. Croix don't have an independent government.
Right.
Everything is the Virgin Islands economy and the Virgin Islands government. Now, what do we do as a Virgin Islands to ensure that we have a strong economy? Because you cannot say that St. Thomas has a strong economy and St. Croix has a weak economy. In a sense, is the Virgin Islands as a whole is hurting. Even though you may have some high points taking place in St. Thomas, how do we make sure we put attention that it's a Virgin Islands problem and that's not a St. Croix problem?
Hey, that's a good point, because as the Virgin Islands goes, so does St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. It isn't like if St. Thomas and St. John are very successful and St. Croix falls off the shelf, that it's not going to affect. Government's going to lose revenues, government's not going to be able to provide service, we're all going to suffer. That has to be explained to the people so that they understand it. And I think this discussion here and these pro shows will do that. St. Croix, St. Thomas is 90% tourism, 90%. They have 3,200 rooms over there. St. John has 900 rooms. St. Croix has 900 rooms. St. John's, three-quarters national park and we have 900 rooms. St. Croix, 60-some square miles, has 900 rooms. So yes, I think that, St. Croix was an economy that was funded by Hovenza. Hovenza made St. Croix bearable because they had a payroll every month of millions of dollars that went into stores and shops and rents and businesses. That's gone. You don't have tourism. You only have 900 rooms. You have nothing to fall back on. St. Thomas, we have a good year, a bad year, but our hotels are still there. They still have timeshares. They have people that own it. The investment is there. So we have to look now toward tourism for St. Croix and small industry. I have a much larger plan that I would like to recommend, but I think that would take a whole other show. But you understand what I'm saying is that St. Croix was a one industry town. It was Hovenza.
I have this statement that says, as St. Croix goes, so does the Virgin Islands. And when St. Croix suffers, the whole Virgin Islands suffers. And I think we're not looking at it in a holistic manner, that St. Croix has been the breadwinner for the Virgin Islands for a very long time. Even though you have a tourist economy means you have everybody having 2-3 jobs and high-paying jobs in St. Croix.
And that's
and I think even the 7 from St. Thomas and even ours are not understanding that concept. And we continue to put St. Croix's economy to a side and say it's a St. Croix problem, not realizing it's a Virgin Islands problem, and we need to put full attention to that. And I'm hoping that if, as you move forward in this process, that you can actually bring some change to the process?
Well, as I said, I listen, I learn, and I hope tonight I have expressed myself with passion, so that you know I will carry this into the legislature. I have the knowledge, wisdom, and experience to be able to pull this off, but I need your support and I need your vote.
Well, I was going to say, I think that we're at a crossroads now where people are looking for changes. I mean, we are in a situation where it's dire, and I think you have an advantage of possibly being a change agent, so to speak, because people are tired of the old and the in and out, and the same, the politics and so forth. So we're really hoping that, well, I want to wish you the best, but we're also hoping that, if you are successful, that you're able to put a lot of these ideas, into action, so that we can actually see it come to fruition, for us as a territory.
Yeah. And we have run out of time. I told you 15 minutes go by rather quickly, but before you go, please just share with the audience, where you can be found, where they can see your information, so they can get in contact with you and ask you more questions if they'd like to.
Yeah. Well, I can easily be found by walking the streets of St. Croix, and I'm out there to talk to, and I will go around and visit as many people as I can. There's not a lot of time left for physical contact with people, but I want people to be aware of my history. And if they think back and remember me as Commissioner of Licensing and the things that I tried to do for St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, and use that history as my gauge. I would like to have a website going up on Thursday coming up, and I will be putting that out.
And what is
The address?
I don't have the address yet.
Okay.
Do you have a telephone number?
I can be reached at 340-690-1260. And my email, and I accept all questions, and anybody who wishes to express themselves, they can do it via email. And it's my name, Andrew Rutnik, RUTNIK, @gmail.com.
Friday night.
Great. Wonderful. Mr. Rutnik, thank you so much for
Thank you for
appearing
coming.
on our show. It has been a great experience to hear from you and have you, and I'm sure our audience will be willing to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Great.
Great.
So thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back in a moment.
And we're back with VI Voices, and we are back into our hot topics again for the last part of our show. And as the gentlemen were going to town, actually, about the AK-47 that was mailed to GRS building. I'm sure many of you heard about that. Now, for the details.
Tell us about the details.
Apparently, somebody mailed or had mailed an AK-47 to the GRS building. I think it was in St. Thomas and mailed to. But the person who was mailed to wasn't there to receive the package. And my issue was, who mails an AK-47 to a government building? And first of all, how did it get in the mail, number one?
That's right.
Well, how did the Postal Service allow an AK-47 to be sent through the mail? And who mails something to a government building?
Somebody that doesn't want to be, somebody who wants to be remain anonymous. And probably that's why they mail it to their business address.
This was an employee?
Well, I don't know.
No, we are assuming it may be an employee.
I'm not assuming that. I just know it went to the GRS building.
I am assuming that it's somebody who would have access to the mail at GRS that could have gotten that gun out and go unnoticed.
Right.
But
And that's my assumption right
that's
there.
very brazen, because to put things like that in the mail. And
Well, it's illegal, I think, isn't it? I don't.
No, to mail a gun, I don't think it's illegal.
To mail a weapon to the Postal Service?
But don't they ship mail guns to the mail?
I don't think so. I don't think you're supposed to. You can go and buy it, and you can bring it
And you have to
with
declare
you
it.
and declare it. But I don't think you can. I've had cases where people were charged with using the mails to transport firearms,
Oh,
even if you break it up.
okay.
And so my thought was, I didn't think you can mail it. You can actually go to the places where it's legal to purchase it and bring it back with you. But I didn't think I'll look at that. I'll look it up.
I think they could be mailed, but my thing about it is,
So the ATF should be at the post
that is
office.
correct, but with the culture of corruption we have it in the Virgin Islands. Anybody is trying to do anything these days.
And that's so unfortunate, because we were talking earlier about how these guns come in from all over the place. But you know what? It looks like Anywhere is fair game.
Yeah, that's what they pay.
But it's the kind of weapon that has me.
Assault rifle.
Is that
Not a
just a
BB gun.
little BB gun or some little type weapon?
Yeah.
I mean, this is AK-47. This is not. Did the individuals who robbed the restaurant out there
In Cane
in KB, did they not have AK-47
Yeah,
on those people?
AK-47.
Okay, I mean, so this is a serious weapon. Our officers don't walk around with AK-47, so they are already at a disadvantage to someone who does
They
have
carry a handgun.
and so who does that? And it reminds me of course, of the fact that I was watching a Senate session yesterday, and the VI lottery was talking about the fact that they allowed an employee to purchase weapons for them, meaning them for the lottery office,
Yeah.
on their credit card, and then they would reimburse the employee. But now they don't have the guns because the VIPD has taken the weapons from the individual. So now they're in a little battle to have the guns returned back to lottery.
But doesn't that sound a bit shady?
A bit?
Lottery buying guns,
Right.
using an employee's credit card to buy the guns, not utilizing lottery's resources to buy the gun. But why does lottery need?
And the lottery office reimbursed him, and that's what Senator O'Reilly was trying to figure out. Why does the lottery office need guns? According to them, they are enforcement officers as well, law enforcement officers as well, and they need to have weapons.
That was the question, though. Who is going to be using these guns? The enforcement officers.
Yes.
But are the enforcement officers, do they go through the law enforcement training like most?
Yes.
Law enforcement?
Well, I think they
Yes.
would
But
be
I
licensed.
thought that property procurement
Would
was
have-
the place where you purchase weapons and then they assigned it to the different divisions. I wasn't where you could do it on your own.
That would have been a logical sense, but
But they couldn't really answer the question, and Senator Roddy was getting very frustrated at them because they couldn't explain why is this employee purchasing weapons for the lottery department, the division, on their own credit cards.
that's a concern.
It's a major
So
concern.
even if it's you see this behavior is taking place in government now. Think about an employee doing it at GRS. So it could be a likely story that
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I'm
But
sure
Senator-
we'll hear more on that.
Now, the PBA, the Police Benevolent Association, is hot with the Commissioner of Police because he has declared that he's going to move some people to a 4-day work week in which you would work 10 hours a
10-hour
day
shifts.
as opposed to 8. And the PBA is basically saying, you know, having officers work 10-hour shifts is going to reduce their accuracy and their ability to properly act as police officers. Do you believe that?
it's a union issue. I don't believe work 10-hour days. It's a toss-up. I think having 10 hours is maybe more manageable and maybe cut back on the overtime, maybe from an operational standpoint. But is it allowable in the union's contract? You already have a contractual agreement with your employees.
Right, I think to
And
make
that's me,
those-
that's the issue right there.
You're right, to the extent that they already have an effective collective bargaining agreement. You can't just come now and unilaterally make these changes.
Well, apparently
Looking
not,
for-
Natalie, because that's what happened with this 8% cut,
Well-
where they unilaterally changed every single government contract in this territory, and Judge Gomez said it was, hey, it's okay to do it.
So basically, this precedent already have been
Yeah.
set, and Commissioner White is just following precedent.
In other words, when there was that union lawsuit, and, you know, I was a part, disclaimer, I represented the teachers in that lawsuit, and it's not completed yet because there's still other counts that the court hasn't ruled on, but as it pertains to the contract clause issue, the court says, hey, they've given some reasons why it's necessary to do that, and it's okay, and there's no contract clause violation. When that opinion came out, it was a free-for-all, because why would anybody contract with the government of the Virgin Islands if they could just come in and say, oh, we have no money and we have some problems, and so we need to change this, and you can do nothing about it.
Correct.
And so there's a precedent set. He comes in and
Yeah.
says, look, this is going to be for safety, and this is going to be to reduce funds, and so we're going to move it to a 10-hour
Right.
work day.
Well, you
shift.
know, it appears that there's a move to disintegrate unions in the Virgin Islands
Yeah,
it is.
altogether. You see,
Yeah.
so when you start chipping away at these very areas that are the essence of these contracts, you start putting them into question, and it's unfortunate what happened, but it's the reality of what we face now, because that precedent has been set. And well, I wouldn't go to jump to say that the Commissioner of Police is capitalizing on that, but obviously he is in for a battle with the PBA members who hold their own. And if in fact, you know, I don't recall what the contract does say, but I do know that it provides for working hours and working conditions. And if this is going to run amok or in violation of what the contract says, that's definitely going to be a challenge.
I can see
But
that.
the funniest thing about it, this commissioner has been on the job less than a year. And he came in and just wants to do this. So what does he say about the culture of doing business in the Virgin Islands? That there's no respect.
Absolutely.
There's no respect for the working men and women. No matter what type of service they provide. Because he just comes in and he wants to do that without actually doing an analysis, getting his feet wet, being here for a full year. And no. He probably had this idea in the back of his pocket.
Because I don't think his role was to sit here to listen. His role was to come and do exactly what it appears that he's doing.
At 125,000 in about 100 plus thousand.
Yeah, because well, I think it was 130. I think he was with the Commissioner
Of Health. That's
who
correct.
they had to have 130 in order to get a certain amount of money, even with the 8%
With the 8%
cut.
that it will be effective.
You see?
Imagine that.
But you know, yeah, well, hey, I think we need to look at it closely. But one thing I was going to say regarding those PBA contracts, and just the contracts in general across the board, we have to look at the treatment that these people in these unions are getting. I know, for example, there's a movement now to bring these exempt positions and more or less outlaw the collective bargaining agreement positions. You see? So again, there's an attempt to erode and erode and erode. And I'm not saying that the Commissioner of Police is attempting to do that, because when I look at it on the other hand, on the flip side, okay, the union is saying it's dangerous and unacceptable, but you're talking about law enforcement. Law enforcement are accustomed to long hours. You know, this may be to maybe curtail on overtime, for example. So instead of doing 8 hours, 5 days a week, they're doing 10 hours, 4 days a week. So, you know, there may be justifications for it on the management side, you know. But
we definitely need
we'll
to
see how
follow
that
this
goes.
story as it goes on.
But let me kind of say one thing. If there's anything, and this may open a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
If there's anything the Commissioner of Police does, I would say, is to cut out moonlighting by police officers. Because that speaks to the integrity. I don't think they should be pay them well enough. That the only masters that they have is the VI police department.
But that's a catch-22. That's a catch-22 because you say cut out the moonlighting, but then again, it's subjected to their pay scales on the union contracts. That's how.
But one of the
they
problems though with moonlighting is that it oftentimes brings liability to the government of the Virgin Islands when they're involved in something that they shouldn't be involved in. Because as you know, the Attorney General has made it very clear, not this one, but a prior Attorney General, that a police officer is always a police officer, for whether they're on duty or not.
Right.
So when they're involved in a shooting or something else that may cause harm to somebody improperly, that person can hold the government liable for that officer, even though they're off duty.
Correct. And I see, and to me that also speaks to integrity, trust, a whole heap of issues that the police department is trying to deal with. And I would encourage that if there's something he changes, that would be something I would take. But pay them better and then affect that.
But to be able to do that though, you have to move away from all the exempt positions. Because what we're moving towards more exempt positions and less collective bargaining.
Actually, what I would like to see is a mixture and an influx of officers who have no association whatsoever with the territory of the Virgin Islands, mixed in with officers who are from the Virgin Islands.
You boil back down to recruitment, and how do you recruit people? You have to be able to
And recruit sane people. Because we have a lot of officers on here, on our force, who are bullied, and when they were in school, and they have developed this kind of, no, let's be real.
You want to
I know quite a few of them. And who have now developed this sense of, I'm an officer, and therefore you do what I say. And they're missing the point of what their public service is.
Correct.
And then we get blamed, meaning, you know, us defense lawyers get blamed when we go to court, and the law tells us we're supposed to give rights, due process rights to every person we represent, and challenge certain things, and courts get blamed when they have to follow the law and dismiss certain things or suppress certain things because an officer was too happy when he was acting. I don't find that we are recruiting officers who are ready to be officers.
And maybe, and you're right, maybe it's the recruitment, not just recruitment, maybe it's also the training and preparation.
Oh, of course.
And maybe some of those things need to be.
There are officers who still don't know what probable cause is.
Correct. And even
and it messes things up.
Correct. And sensitivity training, customer service, because they definitely at times, I'm a client. Even though you're definitely writing me a ticket, I am a client and I'm receiving a service. And you must know how to handle that person. And they don't. And at times,
I will say this. You know, I work in Frederickstead, and You know, we had some officers that worked in Frederickson who every business owner knew. And every business owner knew them because they used to walk all around in Frederickson. And every once in a while, they'd pop in the office or your store and say, hey, how you doing? Make sure everything is okay. You know what happened to those officers? Because of politics, they were all moved out from that Frederickson area, brought in new officers who never even left the substation. Nobody knew who they were. You couldn't find them anywhere. And so this is the kind of thing, it's not only the officers, but it's also those in the rank and file, who those individuals who are leading and supervising has to play a role in what's going on with our police department.
So you're saying that, I think there needs to be a complete overhaul of the police department, change the structure, change a lot of things, and I think they're going to be more productive, and I do think they're going to be moving forward. But I do believe it will be a catch-22 if this particular commissioner actually goes out and try to recruit officers from away, because then you're going to hear they say he wanted to bring his friends from.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's going to always be an issue because, you know, when former Lieutenant Governor Mapp said that, it was a huge thing. You don't want locals, you know, working. But, you know, I come from a long line of law enforcement officers. My uncle used to be commissioner of police. My other uncle was one of the chief forensic officers of the Riyadh Police Department. My aunt was also a sergeant in the police department. And I always think about the fact that what the police department has now as far as resources, they never had, but they solve more crimes than the officers we have now. And it was, in my mind, I think it was not only training, but it was a love for what they did, and they wanted to make sure that the community was safe. And so they didn't have all these labs and all these other things going on then, but they solved more crimes that point.
Good point. But we have to keep in mind that, look at the qualifications. I think you can be an officer right out of high school.
I think it'd be 21.
21.
Yes, you can possess the weapon, but you can be an auxiliary.
Yeah, they have a program now. They have
but basically with a high school diploma. Basically.
It requires nothing else further than that.
Really.
But there's other locales that's demanding more. 32 credits college courses, and one of them is psychology.
Some of them requires bachelor's degrees before you can be a police officer.
Correct. And some of the courses are psychology, because they know in policing is not just basic shooter, say freeze, is more than that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things that goes through being a police officer.
Especially being armed with a weapon.
We'll see how that goes. Now, GRS, back to them, but not about the weapons, but about the fact that they have some financial, will have some financial woes. Because as you know, some expert has stated to them that in a couple of years, they're not going to have any money. And as you know, the government of the Virgin Islands have, for some individuals, have not paid their portion of their retirement funds. And the GRS is now telling those individuals who want to retire, you either have to take a lesser amount, which is what you contributed, or you have to now put in what the government didn't contribute to get what you want. What do you think about that?
Man, I think let me start from the top down. The board. Do they truly understand their fiduciary responsibility?
I don't think they do.
And to me,
we're going to invite them on the show.
And do they understand that four-letter word woes? I think they do not, because they keep then deferring, and then trying to pass a bill, put it before the legislature. And there's some urgency each time, and I think they're not recognizing that they basically need to handle the system, stop the hemorrhaging, and start to manage the people's money a lot better. And that's not taking place. And how do they do that? By getting the membership involved, developing an adequate strategic plan, and actually starting to invest wisely. Stop giving their friends.
But you have to have the money to invest.
You have to have the money to invest.
And here's my question. My question is, if I've been working for the department for 30 years, I'm ready to retire. I submit my notice to you 6 months prior, I think which is what was required, and you get it. And you realize when I submit it, that for the last 10 years of the 30 years I've been working, the government of the Virgin Islands has not paid the portion they're supposed to contribute to me. Would you not then say to me, advise me what has happened, send a letter to the government saying, Government of the Virgin Islands, this person has given notice that they intend to retire within 6 months. By this time, please pay this amount of money as the contribution you are required to pay.
Correct.
And notify the employee. Don't tell the employee, oh, well, you can retire if you want to, but if you want your full retirement, you need to go pay in what the government didn't pay in for you.
But don't you also then inform the unions as well? Because it's also a breach of their contract. That's a benefit of their contract.
That you're entitled to.
And you're telling me you're waiting until the end and then putting the burden on the employee.
And the GRS, in my view, which is why I think they have a fiduciary problem and could probably get themselves sued, is you're supposed to use that money to invest and make more money so that everybody else who are retired can get their money. If this person isn't paying in, the government isn't paying into it, why did you not notify the government and say, listen, you have to put this money in? You're the board as a fiduciary person for me.
Correct.
That's right.
The annuitant.
And who really owes here is the government of the Virgin Islands. You
Right.
cannot penalize the employee who has done what they're supposed to do. They've made their contributions, they put in their time into the system, and now they're being penalized when it's time for them to retire.
But, and you're very much correct about, but how do you allow an employee, how do you not take out contributions out of an employee's check? And you do this for, I understand year one. What about year 2, year 3, year 4? Where's the audit? Where's all those different systems that have been put in place?
That's the GRS.
And I see
that's their role.
And Emile, I cannot take that anymore. And I think a lot of us keep saying, "Oh, this is how the Virgin Islands operates. This is what island life is all about." No, and I think that's when they start to do unsavory things and underhanding things. That's what it's all about. Oh, this is how the Virgin Islands operate.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes, but we're out of time
Already?
for hot topics already. And we didn't get too hot, so we didn't get through it. But that's okay. We will be off on Labor Day. We won't be here, but we will return on September 4th with Gerard Los James II, who is the president of the 5th Constitutional Convention. We've dedicated an entire hour to that show.
I'm looking forward
and I'm looking forward to talking to him about that. And so Mr. Rutnik was on tonight. We appreciate him for being on the show. We had some great topics and conversations, and we want our audience to know that we will be here throughout the rest of this election cycle to bring all the information that you need to ensure that you are well informed. And remember that your voice can make a difference. Good night, everybody.